The future of statehood is digital. Developments in the realm of digital technology and cyberspace are increasingly eroding the boundaries of space and time, eradicating the physical distance that has been a constant theme of human history. In just 24 hours, people or goods can reach practically any place on the surface of the Earth, something unheard of and unthought of just over 100 years ago. Corporations and private companies are increasing their power as they come to control larger and larger amounts of capital, and even the flow of information itself, often coming to rival states themselves in the extent of their power. Cyberspace is increasingly playing an important role in society, changing the way in which we interact with each other through social media, playing host to vast financial networks, and disrupting more traditional forms of media and flows of information. As the world moves rapidly forward into the 21st century, the role that digital technology will play in both statecraft and governance is becoming progressively clear. The growth of digital governance over the course of the next century will undoubtedly fundamentally change the concept of statehood, perhaps initiating a process of deterritorialization. By the end of the century, concepts such as states, citizenship, and governance may become unrecognizable to the modern-day person, just as the modern monolithic states we have today would look alien to people in the feudal and pre-modern eras. Whole countries may exist purely within the realm of cyberspace, and citizens of countries across the globe may be governed from completely different territories to that of their home states. Distance, territory, and borders may become irrelevant, with states behaving like private companies, competing for citizens' tax revenue in a highly advanced world of fluidity and rapid movement. Companies such as Amazon, Facebook, and Google could offer citizenship. Your next-door neighbour may live in a different country to yourself, or may simultaneously be your fellow citizen, while also being the resident of a completely digitized online state. Whole populations may find themselves being governed by artificial intelligence and other forms of computer systems. For now, these things remain completely hypothetical, but nonetheless, we will examine how things could look over the course of the next 15 minutes, in episode 1 of the ARGS Classic series, which aims to examine the field of geopolitics itself. In 1933, 20 North and South American states came together at the Uruguayan city of Montevideo in a convention on the rights and duties of states. At this convention, these states set out a general criteria for what constituted a state, and the criteria set at the convention are now largely accepted within the field of international law as defining statehood. These 4 criteria, known colloquially as the Montevideo Convention, are set out in Article 1 of the convention as follows. 1. A permanent population. A state must have a population, though there is no need for this population to remain in a fixed area within the state's territory. 2. A government. A state must have a stable political organisation capable of exercising levels of governmental control. 3. The capacity to enter into relations with other states. States must be able to engage in the sphere of international affairs. And 4. A defined territory, which will be examined and questioned in this video. After 1933, and in the post-Second World War era, and also in the context of the mass decolonization which occurred, these criteria were functional, clearly defining what it took for an entity to become a state in a world littered with post-colonial and post-imperial disagreements and conflicts. However, as mentioned before, in the modern day, with the rapid advance in digital technology making the world a smaller place, things are changing. As the ongoing coronavirus pandemic has shown, physical distance is increasingly becoming irrelevant. Whole organizations such as governments and corporations can now function from anywhere connected to the internet. This process is known as time-space compression, and we can see it in action in regard to conceptions of statehood in the past. In Europe, after the fall of the Roman Empire and throughout the medieval era, what can be called states functioned on the basis of their topography, or what is more commonly known as terrain. Travelling vast distances was hard and often dangerous, and therefore enforcing the will of the state in all corners of its territory from a central capital was almost impossible. Thus the rulers of these states delegated their power to local officials such as lords, barons and knights in order to successfully govern their realms. However, as technological progress began to pick up going into the early modern era, this would change, as advances in maritime technology began to spread and new road infrastructure was implemented. Rulers would increasingly begin to centralize their power, as these modes of transportation allowed for faster travel, and thus the faster travel of their armies and the faster flow of data. Travelling longer and longer distances became slightly easier, making the state more powerful in its capacity for governance. Moreover, the invention of the printing press would allow for the publishing of literature for the masses, driving changes in the realms of ideology and religion. Then came the Industrial Revolution. This great development of industrial technology sent shockwaves through the existing political and economic systems of the world, allowing for the rise of whole new systems of governance and change the base of society. The advent of steam power, canals, and railways would further shrink the world, again allowing for the faster transportation of goods, armies, and data. This period also saw the major development of cities, which also fundamentally altered society and the way it was governed. The 20th century would also see the continuation of the same trends brought on by the Industrial Revolution, giving rise to the globalized world in which we find ourselves today. It would also bring with it a wave of decolonization, adding a multitude of new states and actors to the international system. However, now we find ourselves at the beginning of a new technological paradigm, which is again going to fundamentally alter every aspect of our existence, namely the digital revolution. Just as I have demonstrated to you very briefly, this too will result in dramatic change within the realms of ideology, politics, and religion, while also changing the concepts of government and statehood. As the coronavirus pandemic has demonstrated, complex organizations can now function in a decentralized manner through the internet. At this dawn of the digital age in which we now find ourselves, we are now beginning to witness what the power of absolute fluidity of data and capital can achieve. Big words aside, what this means is that information and money can now reach any part of the globe in seconds, representing absolute fluidity or freedom of movement. In the realm of statehood, this may mean a degree of deterritorialization. Put simply, deterritorialization is the process of separating statehood from physical space or territory. In the same way many people can now perform functions they had previously had to travel for and do in person, such as shopping, banking, and healthcare, deterritorialization represents the shift of the functions of government into cyberspace and the internet. If this were to occur, whole countries could exist within cyberspace, becoming states without territory, or states whose territory exists solely within cyberspace. Essentially, deterritorialization would mean that states would no longer require territory. By now, I can imagine many viewers asking themselves if I have gone off the rails, so bear with me. To understand how this is possible, we can look to the small Baltic nation of Estonia. On its independence from the Soviet Union in 1991, Estonia was poor, very poor. So poor in fact, that the country knew it could not rebuild its public services in the way many other states had built their own public administrations. Knowing that it would be restrained by a lack of funding, the Estonian government chose to rebuild itself and its public administration with an emphasis on the use of digital technology in order to keep costs down. In 1991, less than half of Estonia's population had a phone line, and there was little in the way of widespread advanced technology. However, the Estonian government made internet access a human right, spreading digital technology across the country and even to more rural areas. This decision would lay the foundations of the digital state that Estonia has since spectacularly built. The country's emphasis on development through information technology has made it the most advanced digital society in the world today, with many other states looking to Estonia for guidance on implementing their own e-governments. 99% of Estonian government services can be accessed in cyberspace, and 99% of Estonian citizens have a digital ID card, allowing them access to government services irrespective of their physical location. This card can also be used as proof of ID in the electronic environment, including for services such as online banking, national insurance, voting, tax, medical records, and e-prescriptions. In addition, in the country's 2019 parliamentary elections, 247,000 people, or 43.8% of all participants, voted over the internet, proving that e-democracy is viable. Estonia has effectively proven to the world that digital governance is feasible, demonstrating that a state situated in cyberspace is possible. Of most importance for this video is Estonia's E-Residency Scheme. This scheme was the first of its kind, offering residency to non-citizens residing outside of Estonia, allowing them access to Estonian government services such as company formation, banking, payment processing, and taxation. Anyone in the world can now register a company in Estonia, taking advantage of its EU membership and transparent digital business environment. This scheme is representative of deterritorialization. Estonia's government services can be accessed by any of its citizens anywhere on the planet, regardless of location. Estonia's role as the leading digital state gives us an insight into how states may look in the future. The country's e-government arguably proves that electronic statehood is feasible, meaning that governance can be carried out through the internet, perhaps making physical territory irrelevant to statehood. Just as equally, it could be argued that the expansion in the capability of information technology represents the beginning of cyberspace becoming a form of territory in itself. However, this is a topic for another video. If then, states no longer require territory, then how would a purely digital state satisfy the other criteria of the Montevideo Convention in international law? When examining this, we can look to changes in governance and the growth of actors in the private sector. The growth of neoliberalism in many Western European and North American states has meant an increased level of privatization, with private companies taking on roles in areas previously considered to be within the public sector at a greater rate. A perfect example for this video is the growth in private military companies in recent years. These companies provide services previously thought to be solely the role of the state, at least in the modern era, and are growing in use and scope going into the 21st century. It is entirely possible a deterritorialized digital state could use the private sector to fulfill many of the requirements of the Montevideo Convention, hiring private military companies in military and policing roles and using software to provide other government services in the same manner as Estonia. Moreover, many private companies are increasingly coming to resemble states themselves, and many states are coming to resemble private companies. Take Amazon. If Amazon were a country, its GDP would be larger than that of Kuwait, the 56th largest economy in the world as of 2016. Amazon's power as a platform is unrivaled, and the company is only expanding its power as the global coronavirus pandemic continues. The same goes for Facebook, which now has over 2.7 billion active users per month as of 2020. These companies, in many cases, now have more raw political and economic power than many countries, and this is even more demonstrable as of early 2021. Therefore, conceptually and hypothetically speaking, what is to stop these companies offering citizenship in the same way you take out a subscription to Amazon Prime? Amazon as a company has the capacity for governance to enter relations with other states and negotiate treaties due to its corporate power base, and also has a customer base that could become its permanent population. So, if territory were no longer a condition of statehood, what is to stop the company becoming a state? Just as you are guaranteed certain services with the company's Prime service, what is to stop the company having a subscription for citizenship, giving a citizen or customer the same services as a traditional state, but instead globally? A globalized market for citizenship would also introduce market forces into the field of statehood, with states competing for citizens and their tax revenue in the same way companies compete for customers and their money. In turn, this could make states more efficient as they begin competing for citizens in the same way that competition between companies drives innovation. Deterritorialized statehood could provide citizens of countries with failed states or authoritarian governments with citizenship and a passport of a functioning state, giving these people greater freedoms globally. Citizens of traditional states, such as the UK, US, or China, could also benefit from the services offered by deterritorialized states, as their own governments cut spending on services such as waste collection and policing. If we are to say that territory is no longer required for statehood, and the line between private companies and states continues to blur, then how would the geopolitical landscape of the world look on a deterritorialized globe? To understand how this may work, I have created a conceptual framework. In the future, hypothetically speaking, if there were deterritorialized states that existed solely within the realm of cyberspace, then these states would also exist within the physical territory of traditional states such as the US, China, or India. These states would be called vertical states, while the traditional nation states we have now would be called horizontal states. Vertical or deterritorialized states would exist within the territory of horizontal states, being primarily based in cyberspace. These states would have their own governments in the same way that horizontal nation-states have their own governments. These governments would be able to set policy and interact as actors on the global stage in their own right, entering into treaties with other governments, while also being able to set domestic policy for their citizens in their own states through the internet. Vertical states could have their own currencies, creating their own cryptocurrencies similar to Bitcoin, Ethereum or Litecoin, and could set tariffs on goods and services levied on electronic payments. Many may question how two sovereign states sharing the same territory may work. In order to answer this question, I would point you to the European Union or US, where state governments share their sovereignty and thus territory with a federal government. The horizontal states we know today, and have known since the dawn of the modern era, would still exist, and would likely remain the main entities in the world of geopolitics and international affairs. However, as we are increasingly witnessing, many states are already beginning to experience the negative impacts of globalization alongside its positive aspects, often making them less competitive and less amenable to their citizens in their drive to keep up with more dynamic states. This model of statehood is derived from the realm of information technology itself and is arguably reflective of the trajectory of modern geopolitical trends, such as the demise of traditional borders and the deterritorialization of global financial markets. As technology advances, particularly in the field of artificial intelligence, the process of time-space compression will only intensify, with travel becoming faster and faster, and means of sending both data and goods becoming more efficient and quicker. Arguably, this model is a good starting point for the geopolitical thinkers of the future, and is all the more relevant given the implications of the ongoing coronavirus pandemic and the role of catalyst it has played in regard to changes in spatiality and governance. Whether or not this model conforms to the future reality of statehood and international affairs or not, the trends set in motion by the ongoing digital revolution are undoubtedly going to change statehood, statecraft, and governance. Furthermore, the field of international law and states themselves will increasingly have to deal with the impacts of the advance of technology, such as having to consider the geopolitical implications of issues such as territorial claims in space and on other planets. The idea of states based in cyberspace also has its limitations and would throw up its own array of problems, particularly in the domain of cybersecurity and warfare. However, this again is a subject for another video. Nonetheless, the coming advances in digital technology and how they are managed by states, companies, and individuals will come to shape the way society operates, and these changes may be coming sooner rather than later. Hey guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it thought-provoking. This video was made in partnership with Reason Rising, who designed my awesome new logo. The goal of Reason Rising is to promote lesser known, yet top quality YouTubers that specialise in politics, geopolitics, history, economics and media in order to help them grow their channels by shining a spotlight on them. I absolutely love this website, and by visiting, you would not only be helping myself and Reason Rising, but also other smaller content creators who deserve a spotlight. There is a link in the description to Reason Rising, so please check out the website. Leave your own comments on how you think statehood and governance may evolve going into the future, as I'd love to know. Also, like this video if you want me to make more content like this. Once again, thanks for watching.